WNST, Towson, Baltimore, and Baltimore Positive. We are in the midst of another great conversation. I'm going to give some love to all of our sponsors, including Royal Farms, real fresh, real fast. I've got the world-famous chicken box here. When I turn the box around, it has the Western fries. It says here, Western fries are hand-cut into generous wedges, and they're always generous. They're huge. From the biggest, choicest potatoes and lightly battered, that's what makes them special, with these special blends, I told you special, of seasonings, then quick-coated to golden perfection right in the store. Get on in there. World-famous chicken, trans-fat-free. And it's almost Chicken Palooza. They're going to send me a cool shirt for that. Pizza John's, got to get over there and get a pizza. I've been hankering a cheesesteak sub. I will see them very, very soon as well. Our friends at Sporticulture Court, keeping my magma lamp in. I do not have an Oreo magma lamp, but they're not going to play. And Taharka Ice Cream. Alan and I talked about our love of chocolate love and honey graham and all that good stuff. Alan, you and I cover the gamut here on race and Baltimore and Milford Mill and Dundalk and all this stuff. And we sort of got up to that point where like, how did this guy get elected, right? Like, how have we allowed this creepy orange white racist to walk through the White House last week with a coterie of nothing but white people, letting off tear gas bombs and rubber bullets to go to a house of worship and hold the Bible upside down and not read from it and march back and have this somehow be completely sort of swept up in the protest itself. It's its own stunt, its own WWE stunt, blasphemous by anyone who subscribes to Christianity, I would believe, but in your own hometown, the local news here is what's going on. As I looked out the window last Tuesday night, Alan, and I mean, I got really, really choked up at the window. I was looking out. I'll get choked up talking about it, but I was looking out the window, and a group about 200-300 protesters came through right in front of Governor Mayor Schaefer's statue, next to where you and I used to broadcast at Hooters many, many times. And I think you and I had a few beverages at the Phillips Piano Bar down below, about 50 feet off of there.
Mine were usually ginger ale, but yes.
Bless me, Father, for I have sinned. Yes, I've drank some beer. Yes, I've had a lot of beer. Never while driving or like that. But so these folks come around the corner and I'm hearing the sounds out the window of a protest, and I grab my binoculars. I've just been so fascinated by the architecture of these protests in the street that I see from above. In their size, their scope, how many kids are on bikes, how many white people, black people, old people wearing black, the shirts they say, the signs, what they're saying, and holding hands. But I looked out. This was at dusk. It's about 8 o'clock at night. I looked out, and I had my binoculars, and I'm not a peeping Tommy, but to be really honest, the binoculars aren't all that interesting up here, right? Like, you don't see much in windows at all. You see people on the street, or you see they're better for bird watching than anything else, because the birds get on. You can see falcons and stuff. Boats, they're good for boats. But I looked down and I looked at the protest, and they were coming literally where our Free the Birds protest came through, literally the same area. And I looked down and I saw 300 people, and I heard noises, and I looked down just to see what it was. Alan, I looked down and I saw these 6-year-old girls, little girls holding their mothers and aunts and uncles and grandparents. I saw people in wheelchairs. I saw people walking. I saw white people. I saw black people. I don't know if it was a church. I don't know if it was a neighborhood. I don't know what it was, but it was 300 beautiful people marching through the streets with their children, Alan. And I thought to myself, these kids are going to see the world in a different way than even 5 years ago when it was different. And for me, any mayoral platform for me needs to be a 10-year plan that speaks to where that 5-6-year-old child is 10 years from now in this city. And we talked about education. We talked about, to some degree, we got up on this incredible monster that 63 million people have sanctioned to lead our country. And I think we're getting down now to this summer and all the things you wrote about in your Facebook post, Alan, about gerrymandering and power and structure and what kind of a country we're going to be. And I'm going to be spending the summer talking about what kind of city we're going to be, whether it's Brandon Scott, whether it's Sheila Dixon, whoever it is that's going to be the mayor, but more importantly, who's going to run our country and who's going to set the tone for this kind of behavior. And I know you referenced Colin Kaepernick. Alan, your Facebook status sort of referenced everything. I don't think you left anything out of here.
I stopped posting regularly on Facebook a while ago, Nestor. I wasn't sure how much value there was in it. Sometimes I feel like social media is the echo chamber that a lot of people reference it to be.
And you're taking care of struggling parents right now, and you're seeing the world differently in the same way I did when my wife was dying and my mother died and my cat died, the things that were the most important in my life, literally,
Absolutely.
Other than my son. When you're doing that, when my wife was dying, it didn't matter what Donald Trump was doing or what the economy was doing or what Barack Obama, who was then president, was. Nothing mattered. Nothing mattered except being by her side every minute. And so I think we all have that going on in our lives, in addition to all wearing masks, in addition to all of us trying to not get the coronavirus. I mean,
there's no question that my priorities have changed dramatically over the last 5 years with life as you describe it. But this is a moment. This is a moment maybe unlike any that human history has ever seen. I don't know, but certainly in the
the connectivity for all of us to talk to each other on a device, the power in that destructively, as well as in building. It's unprecedented. It is absolutely unprecedented that I can put one word up and 100,000 people can see it in a second. Yes, that's unprecedented.
And but on this moment, I felt like I had some things to say, and I think I said them all. Look, Donald Trump. I mean, I think we all know how Donald Trump came to be because a black man became president for not one term, but 2 terms. And it broke something in the quiet recesses of America where certain people said that this is not going to happen. We're not going to have this because it says something that is unacceptable to some in this country. It spoke to maybe they've caught up too much. Maybe the culture is changing in a way that doesn't work for us.
You mean he's not born in Kenya, right? Let's make sure we're clear on that. But the accusations are second grade, right? Like the
accusation is that the president of the United States should be a white man who has been sanctioned in some way by those of us that have power. We'll play with the illusion that Democrats and Republicans are so completely different, but these accesses to power are for one group. And that when Mitch McConnell stood in the House of Power and said, our number one priority is to make this man a one-term president, he was speaking to something, and everybody ignored it. He was speaking to, this is a mistake, and we're not going to let it happen again. And gerrymandering went into full drive to change the locations of power, how people can vote, where they can vote, and how to reset the country to make sure that voting was harder for people,
especially in Georgia,
and a lot of places in southern states. I don't look. Donald Trump, as hard as this is to believe for me, I mean, Mitch McConnell is in terms of being in politics, in my opinion, the worst thing that's ever happened to this country.
Well, there goes your checks and balances. There are no checks and balances.
He's rewriting the law, the government, how things occur. And I realize the money doesn't come from him, but he is the instrument with which that's happening. And ultimately, he is the instrument that is allowing Donald Trump to get away with traitorous, treasonous, criminal acts that have been proven over and over again. And he simply waves his hand and says, we're not going to deal with that. That's not real. We're going to pretend like that doesn't happen. Look, our society has been moving away from. My father says the worst thing that ever happened to this country is that civics is no longer taught in schools. I don't know if that's true, but it certainly allows people to
citizenship. I've called it citizenship. In regard to Don Moeller being a history teacher, and all the Baltimore Positive, I've just called it citizenship. Like, Alan, I've done so much with the music thing lately, and it's jogged so many memories, right? Like, of just things, I remember the Penguins at East Point Mall last week, and everybody remembered them, These things from my childhood. But in the early 70s, we had a safety town at East Point Mall where, like, we learned how to cross the street and talk to police officers and meet firemen. And, all of that children's civic stuff about birds and bees and animals and how to be a good person and all of that stuff, and Schoolhouse Rock and just
I was
stuff.
Just about to say Schoolhouse
Rock.
Yeah,
stuff that was for us, to be good humans, civility, community, charity, all of that. And civics would be that.
People are no longer interested in understanding how the government works. And I'm not an expert. I'm not going to pretend like I am, but I understand the basic foundations of most things because I want to know, because I'm interested. But the only way a TV reality star this is not something that's just coming off the top of my head. I mean, there are documented events throughout the history of his life where he's cheated people and not paid people that worked for him and kept black people out of his buildings and said and done racist things and taken out giant newspaper ads for making sure black people stayed in prison, and as it turned out, when they were innocent. These are not... That's not fake news. And at every turn, you find more and more. He knows nothing about how government. He thinks that he's a king, and that is not the way the presidency is supposed to work. I mean, it's designed specifically not to be that. But he has levels of power working for him, and not because I don't believe that Mitch McConnell or anybody in the GOP thinks that Donald Trump is a great man, but he's an excellent distraction for the work that's being done. For 8 years, the Obama administration attempted to have judges put in at every level, state, federal, what have you, and they were denied. And since Donald Trump's been in office, they have pushed, I guess, qualified and less than qualified.
Yeah, I saw the Kavanaugh guy.
Candidates through like water through a sieve. The kinds of things that are happening because of the distraction of Donald Trump, and also because people don't pay attention enough anymore, is mind-boggling. So he allows a lot of things to happen that I think more attention would be paid to, and people at some point people would say, "What is exactly going on here?" We don't really have time to do that anymore because of the things that he puts on as spectacle. But the scary part of him is that he is making blatant white supremacy normal in this country. It's not that it didn't exist before. It's that it happened under the surface. It happened in disguise. And in a lot of ways, it allowed things to be ingrained that people never saw. But now Donald Trump is allowing these things to come out into the open in a way that is terrifying, because it allows, I believe, recruitment to happen more swiftly. It's building another generation. I had a conversation with a friend the other day where he was asking if I could understand how people support Donald Trump, and he was making an argument for
money.
Well, money. that was largely my argument. But he was.
I realized when he got voted in 4 years ago what a clown he was and what a con man he was, and the only thing I could compare it to was sort of Angelos in the power trip part of it, where a lot of good people that I think are good human beings, work for Peter Angelos and had to do bad things and cough and look the other way. And how many times I was told he's the richest, meanest guy in the state. Don't get on his bad side. And despite the lies, despite the dishonesty, despite the cruelty, when I think of Peter Angelos, I think of cruelty, in how he has behaved over 30 years publicly in regard to things. And all I could think about was the President of the United States. However cruel he wants to be, he will find employees to enact his cruelty, whatever that is. Whatever Kellyanne Conway, Sean Spicer, this BIM that gets up every day that looks like a Cupid doll and reads the lies and it makes the accusations and all that. I'd always... It's a cult of personality, right? Like that follows that. And in many cases, this is how I keep my job. This is how I keep my gig. That I know enacting damage, it's my job. You don't think of it as that, but it is. And if you want to keep your job around here, you're going to subscribe to the philosophy, whatever that is. I'm sure there are plenty of people that work in Trump businesses that can't speak out because they would be fired or they would be whatever they would be, right? And especially in modern America at this point, if there's a flag on the wall and it says Trump on it and the boat says Trump on it, you better be in line or, they're not going to sponsor me, as an example, right? So I get a lot of that and the divisive part of it, but the part that 4 years ago, I don't know that anybody saw this stacked up, that when you stack up power with someone that's drunk with power and was before, that this was never going to go well, right? And whatever the seeds of racism... Yeah, but go ahead.
If you want to tell me that 3 years ago, ultimately people were voting for what they believed to be the best Republican candidate. First of all, I mean, that's depressing, but he was the closest to their party line. I can accept that.
Well, the feeling was your 401k would grow with him in office, and then all of a sudden it did grow, and then he cut your taxes, and if you're rich, he made you richer. If you're wealthy, he made you wealthier, and that's what he was there to do. So for those folks who run the world, and I have been subjected to it for 3.5 years as well, if you want to play along, if you want to do business here, you will put down your blue hat and act like you're in line with this because you're a good American, even though there was nothing about it that smacked of a good American to me, because Donald Trump was never a good American. And the SOBs and Colin Kaepernick and what that did to my life and my business in Wembley when I took the correct side of the issue and I took the knee that day, 52% of my audience was down on me. They're never going to listen to me the next day. And I'm like, well, then, I keep 100% of my integrity because you're wrong. It's always been wrong. It's
no
popular being wrong this week, but it's always been wrong. And I'll go back 2.5 years ago, and I walked through that locker room in Wembley, and I talked to every African-American player that took a knee, and I said, I had a knee in the press box. Somewhere, my wife probably took a picture of me taking a knee in the press box. I took a knee in the press box that day in Wembley.
If at this point, this far into his first term, hopefully his last term, you can still support Donald Trump, then I question you at every level, because it's impossible, though it happens, for people to not acknowledge.
I'm blown away by people that at one point I thought had some substance and some integrity who are still making excuses for this. To say, Alan, I haven't had one person in my life, and I had a lot of Trump people in my world 4 years ago. I don't know if they're still there. Some are. Sometimes. And if you come in and you take a dump on my social media, you're gone. You're just gone. I'm not having it at this point. I'm not in on the con. I'm not part of the con. I am part of the resistance, and very, very proudly immigrant, very proud of Everything I've ever said or done in regard to this topic, even though it's real cool now, it wasn't real cool a couple years ago. When I had a sponsor literally cancel on me, not pay their bill, it was only $12,000, by the way, that they never paid me, and insist that every teacher should have an AK-15 in their classroom, that we should train teachers to have guns, that would make our schools safer, while Lock Raven was on lockdown. So I literally dealt with this, and I didn't even go public. I think it's the first time I've talked about it publicly, because it's such an outlandish thought that never would have happened 20 years ago, that's happened in Trump's America, that's just revolting to me. And I don't mind saying it. I haven't minded saying it on social media the last 4 years, how revolting this has been to me.
We're in the conversation I was having, he also was talking about the way to change people was not to talk about racism, not to talk about the uncomfortable things, but to learn the game they're playing and play it to get your people in. And what I was trying to say was, I understood his point, but that we are in a moment where I think it's questionable to how much you're going to change people that have these things ingrained in them for the entirety of their lives. Some will.
I'm just shocked that nobody's come to me and said, yeah, I voted for him, but I made a mistake. Yeah, I haven't had anybody do that. I haven't had anybody come back to me who was an a-hole to me, literally in front of the whole world, right? On my social media, right? Like, it's kind of like the fun of getting in on the radio and yelling at me or something on the back in the old days, to come onto my timeline and make these pronouncements. I've not had one person come back and say, you know what, I was really wrong about that. I haven't. And I'm blown away by that part of it. I really am, that no one has come around at any point to just say, I was mistaken, or as Fonzie would say, I was, whatever that would be, right? Not one. And that is the disturbing part to me.
I think there's some, but I think they're embarrassed that it ever happened. But
ashamed.
40% of the country is still going to vote for him, which is mind-boggling. I think this is a moment, as you described, for the future generations to teach 6-year-olds and grandchildren and those that are having their eyes opened right now to what the world has been for others that may not look like them, and for those that are of color or transgender or women, anybody that has had injustices put upon them or people that they love. This is a moment to acknowledge those things so that what can be ingrained in the DNA of future generations is the understanding of how this country was built, how it works now, how that should change, how to bring about that change, and how to begin teaching future generations about what it can look like, what this country should be, to understand that the values of that the flag is supposed to represent is more important. They're more important than the flag itself. I believe that this is a moment that we have an opportunity to do that, to try to combat some of the last 3-4 years, if you count while he was running for office, where it's been okay to be a blatant racist, to be a blatant white supremacist in the name of Donald Trump. I'm hoping that this is an opportunity to make that apparent to people so that those who have been complicit, and we are all complicit in this to one degree or another, I wouldn't tell anybody anything else. But for those who've sat and said, well, as long as my tax bracket works, this is okay. Or this isn't happening to me, why should I worry about it? Or, it'll be over soon. Anybody who's thought like that, the time for that should have come to an end. And I'm hoping that in this moment we are as a country beginning to open eyes, minds, thoughts, voices to a point that what is coming out is enough. Time to end here and rebuild it and decide who we're going to be heading into the future.
Well, brother, I want you to, take care of your family. I know you're doing all that, trying to stay safe, and get you back down to D.C. and put some shows on down at Kennedy. And hopefully at some point you and I get together and do what we usually do, have some French toast and a coffee or something. No cheese ever with you, Alan McCallum. But I want to take the whole thing full circle, because people in my audience know of you as baseball, and 25 years you've been talking about baseball. Is there anything you want to sort of lay out on the baseball thing to bring this thing full circle from where we began with Jackie Robinson and going on the other side of these greedy SOBs not being able to figure out how to get onto the baseball field? I mean, we talked so much about how ignorant the baseball executives have been to the baseball experience over the course of the last 25 years that you and I, as 50-year-old men, almost 50, drifting a little further away from it, and the passion of all of it, and then you find out that maybe they're not all that passionate about it either, huh?
First thing I want to say is that all of my thoughts and prayers go to Trey Mancini, who in all ways seems to be a fantastic human being. And I know what's happening to him is close to your heart and Jennifer's. But just that root for him to make a complete recovery and to have a good long life and career following that. I do want to go out and say that. Baseball is important to this country in so many ways. And it's at its worst when it forgets that. When it forgets to uphold its civic responsibility. There's however much money has been lost, people are going to make money. The players are going to make money, probably a little less. The owners are going to make money, certainly a little less. But there's going to be money out there if you go about taking on your civic responsibility. It goes a long way. Now, as you said, as the future will be told by what the virus does. The virus doesn't care about contract disputes, doesn't care about, race in America. It's looking to injure and kill some people. So the next couple of weeks are going to tell a lot about what happens in terms of people being healthy. But if they can figure out a way to play games in a safe manner, hopefully without fans, to
come a long way, haven't we, Alan? I went from like, hey man, they played that game with no fans. So let's play them all with no fans. What a great idea! Angelos was a Nostradamus. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
If we can get to that point so that it can be safe and games can be played, I think it would help to heal some things. It often does, and I think that we talked about the common ground that sports can help bridge. If it doesn't stop there, if it opens the door to people of different races, from different parties, of different economic backgrounds, to have conversation, to learn from one another, to experience things, to open the door to understanding and civility and equality. It's amazing what sports can do when they're at their best. And hopefully baseball can overcome the foolishness that is happening right now, and in a safe and positive way go about playing the game so that it can help heal the country.
I feel like I was Chico Escuela. One point baseball was better good to me. In recent times, baseball's not been so better good to me. So this is one of those occasions where, I'm literally speechless, Alan. I literally wrote one line and said, they are who we thought they were. Right? That this has been the history of this, though. And I guess that's the part that Luke and I went through the other day. You can find that out in the audio vault as well. But just how this is we talk about Kurt Flood and Jackie Robinson. This is as much a part of baseball as anything, fighting over the money. And none of us should be shocked by this, right?
No, certainly not.
Alan, love you. Appreciate you. Take care of your family. Hang in there. Stay calm. Wash your hands. Wear your mask. We will, at some point, get some justice. Hopefully get some new leadership around here in November. And hopefully it's not the last time I talk to you. And maybe they'll be playing baseball in a couple weeks. We'll be talking about baseball. Who knows, right?
Indeed.
Alan McCallum, my longtime baseball insider, friend, and West Sider. It's a Milford Dundalk thing going on. Nasty at WNST.net finds me. I'm on Facebook and Twitter and LinkedIn and Snapchat and Baltimore Positive. And Don Moeller will be joining us. We're talking about race in America and elections and who won the mayor's race and how do we count the votes and when are we going to play baseball and are they really going to play football? And if they are, who's going to play? And what did Roger Goodell say last weekend? We are WNST.net, AM 1570 and WNST, Towson, Baltimore. And we're keeping calm, staying local, and always Baltimore Positive.